So what the heck is going on with ARK Invest and Cathie Wood? And does this signal a market crash? Well, let's get into it. Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome to the channel. This is all about growing your account and growing your mind. And if you're new here, my name is Chris. I was a professor for about 10 years. And I enjoy doing this YouTube stuff, and it's really fun, and I do appreciate you joining us. So I want to talk about Janus Fund, and this is, or Janus Capital. I can think it's Janus Fund. I just call it Janus. This is a story that, for those of you old enough to remember it, you would remember Janus. They were basically a fund very similar to ARK Invest, and they would just run commercials on TV all the time in the 90s. And they were really, really clever commercials. And I remember these because they were like all the time during basketball games, during the news. And I don't think they're doing my cartoons, but I grew up watching commercials for Janus. And it was funny because I never knew exactly what it was, but they were clever commercials talking about how cool technology was. And essentially what it was a fund that invested in the highest, coolest companies that you could find. And the stock just kept going up, or the fund kept going up forever. What it seemed, it was very similar to ARK Invest, right? So as you know, last year, ARK Invest was piling in. People were piling in this thing. People had all this money, and it just kept going up, and therefore you should buy it. And it's really interesting that how history repeats itself. And if you haven't guessed, I'm actually quite old, because I know many viewers are younger. But I lived through the '87 crash. I lived through the dot-com bubble crash. I lived through the crash of the 08-09, and I remember that it was a very brief COVID crash. But I can tell you, also essentially I'm a kid of the '80s. I really liked the Top Gun movies, so I joined the United States Navy, and I also really liked the movie Wall Street in 1987, and so I moved to New York City and worked there. I mention these things is because if you live through these eras and you understand what Janus was and how big of a thing it was, just like ARK Invest, it'll be very interesting when you see sort of the things that Janus had. So looking at their holdings, this is back through the 90s, Janus, and then up to the dot-com bubble. Janus had Nokia, and if you take a look at the chart here, this is one of their biggest holdings. Back in 2000, it was trading near $60 a share, and Nokia is currently around $5, right? So Nokia never recovered from the dot-com bubble, which is really interesting. Janus also had Cisco, which was one of those hot companies back then, and you can see the dot-com bubble pattern again. This was essentially an $80 stock, and it still hasn't recovered, which is very interesting. Taking a look at Microsoft was also held by Janus. This was actually a very, very good pick by them. And in fact, the lesson of this story is we all should have bought Microsoft in the 1990s, for reals. You can see, this goes up maximum, so whatever the beginning of this was, kind of funny, just to learn from history. So if you would have bought Microsoft in '86 at 11 cents a share, you would be up 300,000%, which is really funny. So that's from the '80s. So it's like 40 years, but that's a great investment, Microsoft. The other two big holdings they had, which is very fascinating. I can't show you a chart because they don't exist anymore. I'm talking about Janus. One is America Online. And that was the whole "you've got mail." That was essentially a dial-up internet service. And older people watching this video, you'll know exactly what American Online was. And then the other one is Time Warner, which dissolved. And I think essentially America Online was sort of acquired by, I think Verizon, and I think AT&T bought Time Warner. There's a bunch of crazy, what do I want to say, news and sort of stories between the Time Warner, America Online. They tried to merge and stuff like that, but I don't want to get into that. But I'm just saying, if you take a look at what Janus picked, I would say 1 out of the 5 would end up being a good pick, which was the Microsoft one. The other ones didn't do so well. This is important because the lesson from Janus, that essentially a defunct fund now, is they put way too much of their money into the future. And it's difficult to bet on the future because you just don't know who the winners are going to be for sure. You can make your best guesses, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm just telling you. You can make your best guesses, but you just don't know. And the thing about ARK Invest, which is really fascinating, is they did really, really well last year with their stock picks, and it seemed to be everything they would pick would be gold. The problem is, and it was the exact same with Janus, the more popular you get, the more money people give you, and it becomes very, very difficult for you to continue to grow at that same pace. The reasons was a couple reasons. One is the money printing is over. So, in terms of, I show this chart many times for those of you who've watched the channel, but for those of you who know, I'll just show it again. But this essentially shows that this is all the money coming into market this past year. and essentially because of the money printing, that we've been doing. We love to print money in the USA, and people who get, free printing money from the stimulus checks and stuff love to put it in the market, and it goes into ARK Invest, and ARK is like, thank you very much. In fact, there's so much money that was 19 times more than all the other years combined. So last year was a major year, so this is definitely a contribution to the run-up of ARK. The other thing too, which I think is really, really interesting, and that's why I talked about Janus first, how essentially collapsed because of some of the picks that they did, is I want to show you, what stocks is ARK buying and sort of what's going on and where's the bottom. And, I was sort of attracted to this topic because there was someone in the comments wrote, this was on the latest video, it's a pretty funny one. He said, this is Cricket Buddy. Thank you, Cricket Buddy. This is interesting how ARK Invest bought XFEV while all this was happening. I think ARK Invest knows more than you. So Cricket Buddy, thank you for letting me know that ARK Invest knows more than me. And full disclosure, ARK Invest would hire generally people like me to work for them. I'm just telling you how it is. So that's essentially analysts. Our people, ARK Invest, are not necessarily perfect by any stretch. They're human beings. They hire analysts and they pick out stocks. That's how it works. It's not like they're just magic. You have to hire certain kinds of people. So one of the things that I mentioned that is important is because I want to look at the stock ARK Invest here, or the ETF. This is their main one. This is the ARK-K. It's currently trading at 93. And I was actually, not surprised is not the right word, but I was really, really watching to see if it would go lower than the May levels. Back in May of this year, it reached, around 99, so basically just dipped barely under 100 and bounced right back up. Currently trading 93, so we're past the May level. And for ARK-K, we're looking at maybe we're going to be going back to the prices of, I'm just looking at the chart here myself, maybe September. Maybe we're going to see the 80s. And if that doesn't hold, I don't know if we're going all the way back to last year, beginning of the pandemic. I'm not sure. That's what I'm talking about. Is this sitting in the crash? Because one of the things that you want to do in the market when you're watching, are we crashing or not crashing, is look at sort of key, what's the right word, bellwethers. So ARK-K is a bellwether of growth. And the way this thing is moving, it just dipped below its May levels, and it just seems like in a free fall from what I'm looking at. And I don't know if you agree with that or not. And so then I thought about that one person saying, oh, ARK knows more than you, Chris. And I want to take a look at what ARK has and to see if we can figure out is ARK got more downside risk, or is it going to recover? So I figured out the top 30 holdings of ARK, right? And you can see it here. These are the top 30 holdings of ARK, and it's a lot of the names that you all know. And I just looked at their PE ratios, which is very, very simple measure of kind of to get a sense of like, what kind of companies are they into. And one of the things that I think is going to happen, and I don't think it's hard to see, is because interest rates are going up and because the economic future isn't looking so rosy right now. You guys know this, right? Our economy is kind of looking a little bit shaky. Market's looking shaky. And the new Omicron variant is certainly going to create a lot of disruption. So the future doesn't look as bright as it once did for growth companies. And if you take a look at this shows you PE ratios, and you can see the vast majority of the companies, this is the top 30 holdings, the vast majority of them are not profitable. I'll repeat, the vast majority of the top 30 holdings at ARK Invest are not profitable. If you take a look at, so we have Tesla, so I'm just counting this out myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 out of the 30 top holdings in ARK Invest are profitable, meaning they have some sort of PE. The 21 out of the 30 companies in their top 30 holdings are not profitable. And that right there gives you a clear indication that you could have a lot more downside in ARK Invest and in the market. Because I think basically what it was is a lot of people were piling money into, and it works when it works. And I'm not saying it's going to crash forever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, let's be real. Let's look at, the companies that they're investing in. Is that if companies that, are growth and, looking to the future and they're not making that profitable now, but they're borrowing money and, they're using their money to reinvest and grow, et cetera. If money becomes a very different, ball game with higher interest rates and less economic growth, your company's going to have a tough time. It's just the reality, and people aren't going to be so willing to pay such a high premium for your stock that is, in a company that's unprofitable. The other thing too is interesting when you look at this list of all the companies that ARK has. some of these have really faced a lot of headwinds. So you can see Robinhood's on this list against the top 30 holdings. They face a major headwinds. DocuSign just literally crashed the other day. Twitter just lost their CEO. They I don't know what's going on with Twitter, to be honest. They just lost their CEO. And Palantir never really seems to do anything. Now Square and Zoom's been crashing. You guys know that, right? It has a P ratio of 48. Square's an interesting one. I think that's not a bad pick, but it's a very expensive PE of 190. And then Tesla's really their saving grace, but that one has a PE of 329. I mean, the lowest PE on this list is the GBTC, but it doesn't really count because that is your Bitcoin thing. It's not even really a company, it's a Bitcoin. I guess CRISPR would be an okay pick, and I think that one might be okay for them. And that's the only one that's a reasonable PE ratio. And I guess theoretically you could say also Coinbase. That's at 27 to be fair. So I'm looking at this. So their best picks in terms of just their value is Coinbase, which is crypto, which we know how reliable crypto is. You guys know what I'm saying. And Grayscale, the other Bitcoin one, and then the CRISPR one. You could make the case that Tesla is 10 times overvalued. I don't think it's a hard case to make. You can make that case if you love Tesla or not. You understand P ratio. You should be able to understand it. It's at 329 now. I could see it, or even to see it, cut in half. I could see that. Some of the other ones like Roku, I think that one's been crashing. You could make the case that this one's going to come down to, P of 99. This is a come down. I'm showing you this chart because I think it's important for you to understand that largely there's a bunch of companies out there that people have been running up because they're fighting over growth, but a lot of these companies are unprofitable or they're trading at enormously high levels. So I just wanted to point these things out to you because I think it's important to learn from history that even though if something works today, is not guaranteed it's going to work tomorrow. And I can promise you, I lived through it, and I'd love to hear from older people who lived through it as well. If you remember the commercials from Janus Fund and how they were really promoting, they had great commercials. I promise you, they really did. And if you remember, companies like America Online, like that was really a hot thing. Or Nokia phones used to be really cool. I think those were the Matrix phones back in the 90s, and now no one really even uses Nokia. It's like all iPhones and Samsungs basically. I'm trying to think if that was Motorola or if that was it was Nokia, right? It wasn't I can look it up later. It doesn't matter. But anyway. My overall opinion of this is very bearish for the ARK Invest. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think it's important to look at numbers. I'm not saying any of these companies are bad companies by any stretch. I'm just saying, based on the numbers, most of these are not profitable or trading at levels that are too expensive. So I think we could see more downside in the ARK Invest and in the ARK funds, and that's my opinion on that. So. I'd love to hear your opinion on it as well. I personally didn't realize that it was this bad a situation with ARK because I haven't looked at it for a while, but it definitely looks very scary. Now this is their top 30 holdings, and just full disclosure, it's of their all their funds put together. So it doesn't necessarily mean that each of their funds is constructed poorly. Some of the funds might do better than others depending how they're constructed, but this is just the fund as a whole. The other thing I want to mention too is I look at their buys and sells every day. And I have a very good feeling or hunch that a couple of their basically traders, day traders, are keeping them afloat. I think their investments are killing them right now because I can see what they have in their portfolio, like DocuSign, it's killing them. So is TDoc and some of these. But I will say I think their day trading and their swing trading is keeping them afloat because they have some people who are really good at that. They bought Robinhood at a good price, but I don't know if they sold it though. So I could be completely wrong. And actually, in fact, if they didn't sell and then aren't trading it, and then that was a horrible buy because it's just got nothing but down. But when they bought it, it seemed like, oh my God, she caught the bottom and it's coming back up. But right now, Hood looks real scary. So anyway, I'd love to talk about this stuff with you, and I'd love to hear your opinion as well. Is if you think this ARK Invest is all hype, or if you think it's going to come back. I'd also like to hear your opinion on when you look at this list of companies, are you thinking, oh my God, Cathie Wood is a genius. These are all going to explode. And Chris, you don't know what you're talking about. I'd love to hear that. You got the list here. You can see what's in the ARK Invest funds. And I'd love to hear your favorite ones that you think are going to come back. So I do appreciate your time, and I'll catch you in the next video.